Jews living during the time of Jesus were well accustomed to a popular story about a group of divine beings having sexual relations with human women. These stories arose from an interpretation of a peculiar legend preserved in 4 brief verses of the Hebrew Bible. According to Genesis 6:1-4, the sons of God saw the daughters of man and took them as wives, along with a mysterious side note that a group of mighty beings called Nephilim existed during this time. A combination of the strange nature of this story as well as similar ancient Near Eastern myths seem to have contributed to Jewish interpreters' interest in this passage. The Jewish translators who produced the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Old Testament, translated the Hebrew word Nephilim in this passage, for example, as giants. Many other expanded ideas about this short passage in the Book of Genesis developed during the Second Temple period. The earliest source of these interpretations appears to be from the Jewish Book of Watchers. 1st Enoch chapters 1-36, or the Book of Watchers, makes up one of 5 larger units that together comprise what is known as Ethiopic Enoch or 1st Enoch. 1st Enoch is preserved entirely in the Ethiopic language Ge'ez, partially in 2 Greek manuscripts as well as fragmentary Aramaic manuscripts from Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. The Book of Watchers describes the events of a heavenly revolt by divine beings called Watchers. Daniel 4 is the only passage in the Hebrew Bible where the word refers to a heavenly being. The Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar reports that he saw in his dream a watcher and a holy one come down from heaven. According to 1st Enoch, some of the watchers left heaven, attained human wives for themselves, and bore supernaturally giant children. This union had disastrous consequences, leading to increased violence and sin on the earth, the binding of the watchers, and the coming of a deluge by God, a reference to the biblical flood of Noah. In addition to these forbidden sexual unions, various watchers taught humans different crafts and arts such as metallurgy and cosmetics. Scholars of early Judaism have long recognized that the narratives of 1st Enoch chapters 6-11 are actually 2 independent myths that were later redacted to form one narrative structure. In the first myth, the leader of the Watchers is an angelic figure named Shemihaza. In 1st Enoch 6, Shemihaza prompts 200 other Watchers to swear an oath that they will go through with their sexual misconduct. Upon taking the oath, Shemihaza and the 200 descend to Mount Hermon and take human women as their wives. The second myth, however, focuses on another Watcher named Azazel. Azazel is first mentioned in 1st Enoch 6:7 as one of the Watchers who swears an oath to Shemihaza. This second myth focuses on the teachings that Azazel gave to human beings, which resulted in increased sin on the earth. According to 1st Enoch, the God of Israel killed the giants and evil spirits emanated from their bodies. Because the giants were half divine and half human, God is said to have cursed them by making them evil spirits that roam the earth, always hungering but unable to eat. This origin of evil spirits became the most popular explanation in early Judaism. Another Jewish text, called Jubilees, retells a number of stories in the Book of Genesis about the Watchers. Jubilees purports to contain a revelation given to Moses on Mount Sinai. In the first passage, the Watchers come down to the earth in order to teach the sons of man and perform judgment and uprightness upon the earth. Unlike the Book of Watchers, the activities of the Watchers are presumably positive in Jubilees. The Watchers first appear in a genealogical treatise on Seth, where they are introduced through a play on words with the birth of Jared and the verb yarad, to come down. In Jubilees 5:6, the author describes the Watchers as angels whom he, that is God, had sent to the earth. God is said to be angry with the Watchers, but his anger is not directed towards any foreign teachings, but rather the unnatural sexual unions between the women and the angelic beings. According to Jubilees 8, a genealogy of Shem, a man stumbles across a series of astrological teachings, supposedly from the Watchers. He found a writing which the ancestors engraved on stone, and he read what was in it, and he transcribed it. And he sinned because of what was in it, since there was in it the teachings of the Watchers, by which they used to observe the omens of the sun and moon and stars within all the signs of heaven. The final reference to the Watchers in Jubilees appears in Jubilees 10. Before Noah's death, he becomes aware of demonic spirits that have been misleading, binding, and killing his grandchildren. Noah calls on God to bind these evil spirits. However, the evil spirit Prince Mastema pleads with God to let him control 1/10 of the demonic spirits. God listens to Mastema's request, but also gives Noah a series of magical herbs by which to ward off future evil spirits. Some authors capitalized on this retelling in order to promote their own patriarchal beliefs about women. In the Jewish Christian text Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, women are viewed as both the active participants in leading men astray, as well as the tools by which evil spirits tempt and trick men. In Testament of Reuben, the patriarch Reuben is chiefly concerned with matters of sexual immorality, and especially sexual promiscuity. He states that, "For it was thus that they, the women, charmed the Watchers, who were before the flood. As they continued looking at the women, they were filled with desire for them, and perpetrated the act in their minds. Then they were transformed into human males, and while the women were cohabiting with their husbands, they appeared to them. Since the women's minds were filled with lust for these apparitions, they gave birth to giants, for the Watchers were disclosed to them as being as high as the heavens. A number of passages in the New Testament also show evidence of knowing the story about the Watchers. In the book of 1 Peter, for example, the author states, "For Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh but made alive in the spirit, in which he went and proclaimed to the spirits in prison, because they formerly did not obey, when God's patience waited in the days of Noah." The spirits in prison here seem to refer to the Watchers, who disobeyed God's commands during the time of Noah and were subsequently imprisoned beneath the earth. In another passage, the Apostle Paul says that women ought to wear head coverings because of the angels, presumably a warning against a future divine rebellion. The Gospels also recount a debate between Jesus and the Jewish sect known as the Sadducees. The Sadducees were known for not believing in the resurrection of the dead or angels. They confront Jesus with a hypothetical situation meant to highlight the apparent absurdity of belief in the resurrection. Jesus tells them, however, "You are wrong, because you know neither the scriptures nor the power of God. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like the angels in heaven." The exact scripture passage Jesus is referring to is not clear, though he might have had Daniel 12:3 in mind. "And those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever." The stars refer to angelic beings. A similar sentiment is shared in a number of portions from 1st Enoch and other Jewish texts from this time period. The Watchers appear in other Jewish and Christian texts that we will explore in future videos. Understanding the story of the Watchers can help us read the New Testament and other Jewish and Christian literature within their ancient context. Of note is the work of the biblical scholar Michael Heiser, who has written extensively on this topic, among others. If you enjoyed this content, please hit the like and subscribe buttons to be notified when new videos come out.